Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all of you viewers out there. Maybe you do hair, or maybe you don't do hair. I actually get quite a few clients that are like, I love the podcast. So yeah, if you're in business or you love hair, you might love this podcast. It's the Big Money Stylist podcast, and we are on episode number 57?
57.
57. Can you hear me? Is my mic, how do you, no?
Yeah, no, we can hear you.
Okay.
It was tested earlier, let's just be honest.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear better. I'm going to turn it up just there. We got like new equipment in the podcast studio, so it looks a lot less cluttered, and I'd like to sponsored by Naked Green Juice. I'm just kidding.
I'm like, I should feel like I should turn my bottle around then. There we go.
Oh, well, last week I had a fro of curly hair, and today it's wash day, so I literally, it's still kind of like air drying as we speak. So.
Oh my gosh, you know what just came to my mind? When you had that cup of loogies you were drinking?
I was just thinking that. Oh, go back a few episodes or don't. Yeah, I'm
So
like trying to
gross.
incorporate like healthier drinks, so I'm like, and I'm always on the go.
Oh, always moving.
I swear
Yeah.
if somebody saw me driving down the road at any given time, I'm always eating or drinking something.
Oh, I just cut you off at this point. I'm like,
No, literally, I'm sure people have been like, I saw you driving, you're always eating. I'm like, I'm like always on the go. So I'm trying to like incorporate like healthier options,
I mean, that's good though. So today's topic, we have like a few things that we want to discuss. I feel we just got so excited talking about everything, but
I know we've had a lot of changes in our business, and as a business owner and an entrepreneur, like you're always dealing with shit, but the main thing is like focusing on what you're doing and knowing that it's making an impact, and also like improving your business and just going into business the right way and for the right things. So in the beginning of my career, I kind of learned things the hard way, as most of us do, when you start your own business. And it's so funny because I'll see other entrepreneurs out there, and I'm like, now I'm at a point in my career, I'm like, haha, I was there. And it's a good feeling. And I'm sure people look at me and think the same thing. They're like, haha, I was there. And part of me is now like, I'm kind of like rooting for them in a way. Like, I'm like, keep going. You're kind of like, I hope you get over the hump. You know what I mean?
Like you're going to hit a hard patch soon, but keep going.
Like,
don't stop.
Even the ones that like talk shit about me, I'm like, I get it. Like, I hope you make it over the hump. Like, but since you're talking shit, I don't hope you make it over the hump. But that's
like I'm rooting for you, but in a way that I'm like not rooting
totally.
for you.
I'm like rooting for you, like, haha, you have no idea, stupid fucker. But then at the same time, I'm like, good for you for putting yourself out there. You're gonna learn just like everybody else learns, and I'm excited for you to keep going.
Oh, it's people think it's easy. They're like, I don't know, just like open up a place, then just like show up, and everybody loves each other, and it's so fun. But it's like
No.
It's
not until you hit so many oh shit moments that you actually start like having a little more respect for people who have done it, even if you don't like them.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
Like even if you're like, you are a total douchebag, I don't like you at all. There's still this like, all right.
But I respect what you're trying to do.
I respect that, and that's good enough. And that goes in like every industry. It's funny. Garrett just spoke at 10X Growth Con.
Yeah.
And there's this guy that he's like can't stand that like stole a bunch of his stuff and put it in his book and like didn't give Garrett credit and all this shit. And Garrett was just kind of like, whatever, dude. And well, legally he like went after him, and this guy was like, fuck you. But he saw him at the event, and he was like, they just kind of looked at each other, and it was just like, okay, like whatever, you know?
He was there.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
He saw him and like went right up to him, and I go, why did you go up to him? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, I'm not the type of person to like just walk by. He's like, I just walked up, and he said, I have nothing to say to you, homie. Even though he was like threatening to fight him in front of his fans on social media.
You know what though? That's really big of Garrett though.
No, and I was like, did you go over to the intent to like
start some
shit? And he goes, no, I just stood over there and was like almost like thinking maybe we could come to some kind of resolution, like anything. He's like, I just walked over there. And the guy just like wouldn't look at him in the mirror because he's at the gym, and he was like looking at himself lifting weights. And he goes, I got nothing to say to you, homie.
And then you
Garrett's
almost
like,
wonder,
okay.
someone who acts that way so defensively, like, do you think that people who act that way feel a tinge of guilt?
I don't know. I know in the beginning in my brand, like, and it's funny because when I started teaching, and say somebody would be like, I don't like it, or they'd bash it, or they'd be like, oh, it gave some sores on their head or whatever, and they didn't like it, I took it so personal in the beginning.
For sure.
Do you know what I mean? And I would like, I remember getting in these like DM battles with people, and not even battles, but I would just be like, like I'd want them to want to like it, but I went about it even the wrong way. You know what I mean? I went about it with a very like defensive energy, and that didn't really help my situation. No. And it's funny because I used to be like, well, you're stupid and you're not doing it right. But then I had to like look inwardly and be like, okay, well, if this isn't working for them, fuck them. Like, I don't care, whatever. They can go do their own thing. But maybe there's so many, this should be like a red flag to me. And maybe there's so many other people that are doing my system incorrectly. And then it's making it look bad. And then maybe what am I doing? And I literally was like, okay, that's when we started BMS. That's when we started doing like the pre-training. And I always had the pre-training, but we didn't require people to do it. And so as much as it hurts when you start a business and you want to like act defensively, like I can tell you from experience that won't really get you anywhere. So you kind of have to reel it back in and be like, okay, well, how can we educate our students better, you know?
For sure.
And in the end, regardless, like you're going to have somebody you're going to have some asshole who takes one class and then is always going to be like, shit doesn't work. And takes zero accountability. Like that's just how it goes. That's how it goes with software programs. That's how it goes with personal development coaches. That's
it's literally any industry in the world.
Any industry,
all
you're
of them.
always going to have one asshole that's like, well, that guy's an asshole. Oh, well, it didn't work for me. Or some kind of diet they're trying, well, it didn't work for me. Except for I didn't follow the guidelines, the rules. I didn't show up and I'm taking zero accountability.
And I literally only did it for one day.
So you're always going to have some asshole who you feel like doesn't represent your brand. But you always have to look inwardly and not act defensively and figure out how can I up my education to add more value to each student. And if you can do that, you might make it in this industry.
And that's even what we did this year for BMS when we were like, okay, we're not scaling big anymore. We're going to scale down and then really, really, really pour into the 250 artists that we have inside of BMS because that was our cutoff. And they're coming in every single week for the NVR intensive class where it's 15 of us. It's myself, Danielle, where we're just like, it's us really going over NBR.
Right.
And every time they leave, they're like, that, even I asked one girl who's been doing NBR for 3 years. And I said, okay, I'm like, what's your biggest insight? She's like, the way you put your thumb. She's like, son of a bitch. Like that, the whole day, that one thing that was not all she got, but that was like her biggest thing. And it was like an aha, oh my God, my stitches are going to lay so clean and flat now. Like it was a big moment for her.
Even when I'm like, in the beginning when I launched my brand too, like the end beads weren't as good as they could be, you know? But instead I like went in with the mindset of like, how can we fix this? And I think when you're open to learning more, you'll see things in a class where you're like, oh my God, mind blown, because you're open to receiving more and not just saying, I'm not broken, it's not the system. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And so I think like continuing education is key. And for me, like teaching consistently is almost like my own personal continuing education.
Oh my God,
because I learn from students.
Yes.
Because you can be like, oh, I can see why that doesn't work. And that's why you become a better educator, is literally watching the students and being like, your hand's held that way. See how that's over directing? It's pulling this and this. See how you're not like the littlest things. And people will be like, how did you guys know that? And we're like, because we've seen 975 million of these.
I've done 30,000 beads myself, guys. I know what we're doing at this point. But it's so true. When I sit there and the students ask me, like, I can't remember the last time I was asked a question about NBR and felt stumped because I see it so often. I do it so much. And I'm constantly like repeating myself on literally everything top to bottom. It makes you be better.
Right. You become it's like one thing to be an expert at something, but it literally is like a whole nother, like to learn to teach is another skill set. And that's what people don't understand, especially in this industry of hair, because now with social media, everybody, and we said this in our last podcast, but everybody's trying to build a following and put on a class. And I'm like, great, you're an amazing artist.
You're an arter.
But you now have to learn how to educate and teach why you're good at what you're good, or what you're good at what you're doing. I remember going to like color classes and just like paying attention to, and I'm not talking about like social media classes of a good artist. I'm talking about like education classes where people had been educating for years and years and years and years and had reps actually teaching. And I would listen to their verbiage and I would listen to like everything they said down to this is zone 1, this is down zone 2, this is over directed, this is under directed, and like the terminology and the science of everything. And I was like, damn, like that's a good teacher. Not just like, hey, put this hair in the bead and loop it through and it works because I am awesome. Like
and that's, I think, how you can tell the difference between someone who's literally just taken like one class and then they're leaving, they're like, nailed it, got it. But you have to think, driving, you did not learn after one like trip around the subdivision. Like, dear God, help whoever, like my poor parents. Thank God for them. But you didn't learn how to drive the first time. The first time you bleached hair, I'm sure you messed it up for sure. Yeah. And even then, all artists use lightener. Any that say they don't, they're lying. But that's fine. But even inside of that, there are some that I see, and because my hair is naturally very dark, I would trust them to take me from my dark hair to really light blonde hair because they know what they're doing.
Yes, experience.
But it's experience. And then the newbies, I'm like, don't even come near me with an empty bowl.
Let me ask you this, Ani. Okay, so say you are a nurse practitioner. Like, does that transfer over into hair? Like, if you could be the best goddamn nurse, like, on the planet, but does that transfer over into hair?
Those are two completely different skills.
So, like, I look at it as, like, when you're looking for a specialty, like, and we talked about this too, where you're like, you're going to get a rhinoplasty or this or that. Like, it doesn't, like, you want to find an expert in that area, and different fields don't transfer over. Because I like fashion, that doesn't necessarily transfer over into me, like, painting hair. Yes, I can have a overall aesthetic of, like, how hair moves and flows and everything else, but it doesn't actually transfer over to painting hair. So you can't take two different industries and say, well, I'm this, so I must be good at this. Experience is what makes somebody good, and reps is what makes somebody good. And you can't dispute that.
No, and even something like nursing. I have tons of nursing friends.
I have
and they're
clients.
Amazing, but good Lord, don't come near my hair, woman.
Yeah.
But even with that, obviously nursing deals with more of like inside the body, but the hair is the hair. Like that is just, there's a reason there's a completely separate school for it, and it's just different.
Right.
And it's not even, and I think what's so interesting is people, you know, because obviously these days, like there's so much going on. Like I do hand-tied extensions, like that doesn't even make sense, which we talked about last podcast, but you have not been doing this for like 1 year. You haven't been doing it for 2, not for 3, not for 5, not for 7. NBR's been in the making for a decade now.
Right.
There's a reason it's so good. Like so much has gone behind it. And it wasn't just one day, one class, or, oh, I learned another method. Now I created my own. Like this
I would say with hand-tied extensions, I feel like our student base has the most consistent reps. And
for
like
sure.
they're like, a lot of them are like, my whole book of business is MBR. And so I just think it goes to show, like, to see that is like really a test to like our education. But again, just like any kind of system, we're always looking to improve the education, because the education is a separate business on its own. And you should always be able to look at a problem and be like, okay, well, how can we become better? And if you don't, you probably won't make it in this industry.
And that's totally fine too. But I think everyone at some point needs to be accountable and not defensive and kind of crazy some days, because, and given I know it's hair, and because it's hair and it's our art, it's so personal to us.
Any business, any entrepreneur is going to take any kind of like offense to something that they pour tons of money, their heart and soul, and like, trust me, I get it. Like I get it. And you know what? I'm up for people in the industry like creating businesses. That's like, that's great. That's totally great. But go into it smart and go into it for the right reasons, and you'll learn and grow if you have, I was gonna say if you have the balls to stick it out, but like literally like shit's a lot harder than you think. And for me, like I got like so far in, and there were so many times that I personally wanted to quit. Like there was just so much shit, and when people are like, it doesn't work, and I was like, fuck it, I don't need this. And then I just kept coming back, and I'm like, no, and it's really helped me learn and grow as a person, not being like, I quit, I'm done, fuck you guys, fuck the world, you know what I mean? Like it's helped me become like a better person, a better educator, a better mom, like. So anyway.
Well, and I think just what has frustrated me for so long is because I think people look at my job and they see the fun of it. Like, Coach Ani gets to do these trainings. They get to be on stage and hang out with Danielle, DKW. Like it's so fun. But it's like, okay, you're seeing a minuscule amount of what I do. Yeah. Everything else I do doesn't look fun. It's a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings. Like tomorrow I have a walk and talk with Garrett at 5:15 a.m.
Why does he do that?
I'm going to be
so
knocking
early?
on your door, Danielle, at 5:15 in the morning.
Can
you even say I'm thrilled about it? I'm like, how cold it is that early?
Yeah.
But it's fine.
He loves it.
But I know, I'm like, when I saw that time, I was like, he might mean PM. He did not. So, but even inside of that, you know, so many artists have come to him and been like, Ani, I want to be a trainer. I'm going to be a trainer with BMS. I'm going to be a trainer with MBR. And I'm like, dude, yes. Like, if that's what you want to do, do it.
That reminds me so much.
So, well, then we open it up this year to say, okay, you want to be a trainer? Here are the steps. You need to go through initiation, mastermind, licensee. Once you end up here, myself, Garrett, and Danielle will be the ones training you guys, like hands-on, one-on-one. Like, this is the path. And so many, they were like, wait, I have to do what? I have to do all of this. Well, that's so much. I don't want to do it. But then I'm like, wait.
You said you wanted more opportunity. I'm giving it to you. Here's what we require.
There's work.
Nothing is free. Like nothing is free. And you know what? I think it's interesting when I see businesses scale too big, and I'm like, how do you know that they're actually representing what you say you're teaching? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I get it. Like we have stylists that come to our groups and they do one class and then they like get bald spots or they get this and like they didn't continue their education. They don't get it. Do you know what I mean?
The hair doesn't match. The haircut was terrible.
Right. Like
crazy
that
stuff.
always happens. But again, like if I have somebody who's going to represent as an educator, like I want to pour into them. Like, and it's not just like, oh, again, a one-time class of, hey, you got it. Now you can educate. Like these are people that have already been in the program for up to 5 years. And now I'm like, okay, I don't care how long you've been doing hair. Now I'm going to teach you how to teach, because that is a whole nother skill set.
It is so completely different.
Right.
And then I went through as a student inside of BMS for an entire year before I was offered a position here. Even then, Garrett says it was internship, it was probation, but that's okay. So then I was on probation here for a while, like being taught how to train. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like it takes a lot and kind of certain personalities. But I think that's what blows my mind is people say, well, I want this. And then when given, like, here are the literal steps, here's exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
They balk at us like, how dare we ask them to do work? You're
Yeah.
telling me you want to step into the company, get paid as a trainer, train people underneath the umbrella that is NBR, DKW, BMS, but you don't want to do any work for it?
I think because they just don't see what goes on behind the scenes. Do you know what I mean? And I get it. Like, if you haven't started a business on your own and you don't have like, you don't know. And even like there's like a small business and then there's like a business that's scaling and growing. Like, you still don't know. And so at the same time, like I get it and I can have empathy for it, but at the same time I'm like, that's fine. I can create more opportunity, but more opportunity equals like you do have to work for it.
Absolutely. Well, and that's how it was for me. When I knew I wanted to be a part of BMS and NBR and DKW, I was like, okay, I'm going to do what I have to do to prove it in the next year. And I did. And that was not an easy year. Like, that was more work than I'd probably ever done till I moved here, but it was worth it to me.
Right.
So then I see the students who come in, and it's crazy. Even one of our girls, she actually grew up with a learning disorder to where she couldn't really even write or read. Her lessons, like, she would have almost like a transcriber or someone
Like
would record.
dyslexic or?
I don't know what, I didn't ask because it seemed like personal, but she was telling us a story anyway. But she would actually like have someone like write and take notes for her and then like have it in audio, and that's how she learned. She ended up just listening, and that's how she learned to read.
Well,
like,
some people are very like learn like by reading. They're very visual. They're very audio. Like, everybody learns like a different way. But
her learning this, like, she taught herself all of these things. Now her daughter's 12. Her daughter taught herself Korean. I don't even know, like, that. Good for her, man. But clearly, like, it's not that our artist was dumb or stupid. She learned differently. And then coming into BMS and Mastermind, there was a lot of technology involved with uploading stuff. And her and I were literally back and forth multiple times for a week to make sure she got it all. And I was screenshotting things and circling to make it, like, have her understand. But by the time she did it, she just ended up crying. She's like, I fucking did it.
Yeah.
Like, I did this. And she's like, so help me God. She's like, I will be a trainer for you guys. And I was like, I believe it at this point. Like, look at what she did probably 3 times the amount of work because it was so foreign to her.
I do believe that. Like, I always felt like growing up, like, I don't learn probably how most people learn either. And I always just was like, I probably have ADD. I don't know. But I am way more, I would say, like, visual. I have to watch a video. I have to touch it. I have to feel it. Like, I don't know. For me, learning has always been really hard as well. And when I get the whole technology side.
For sure.
Like, I see it, and I think a lot of artists, too, they're known for not being very techie, and they see it, and they're like, oh, and they just shut down. And so, like, I get it. And so, like, when you feel like you have to work, like, 10 times harder, whereas, like, the art kind of, like, flows, and it feels more natural, and then you do something where you're like, holy shit, I did it. I think what it does is it instills, like, an amazing work ethic. Do you know what I mean? Because you're like, I feel like I had to work 10 times harder, but I got there. So really, like, there's no excuses. And I think that's like a super cool story because now she's probably like, cool, it might take me a little longer, but you better believe I have the work ethic and I will get there.
And really, she sat there and she's like, Ani, thank you for being so patient. She's like, anybody else would have been annoyed with me. She's like, she goes, I never felt like I was an annoyance to you. I never felt like I irritated you, like I was an inconvenience. She's like, you were just so patient. I'm like, well, look at, I'm like, yeah, and for me, it was just like, well, of course I was. Like, you were doing it. You just needed a little bit more guidance. Like, that's what I'm here for.
Right.
But I just think it's so cool to see people who are actually willing to go forward and do the work and not feeling so entitled, like, how dare you ask me to do work to train for your company?
Right.
And on top of that, knowing it's going to take more than one day, one mannequin head, one client to actually be good at something.
Right. I wanted to touch base too on this podcast really quick, and I know we kind of have it in the notes, and like we talk about this a lot inside of our industry because a lot of stylists, like, you hear they hear numbers, and we always ask, and people, I just hired a new girl, and I'm like, do you know your numbers? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, what did you make last month? And she told me, and I was like, but do you know your numbers? Like, how accurate are they? And because even in the beginning of my career, when the numbers, I was kind of doing my own numbers, to be honest with you, and it was very vague. I was like, well,
I mean, like, almost.
If I look at these deposits in my bank account, this is what I made this month. That's literally like how I did my numbers. Like I was like, yeah, I made that much last month. And it's interesting now, like we have a whole bookkeeper. We have like things we enter everything into. Like when we say do your numbers, you should definitely hire out somebody to do your numbers if you're in business. I'm just going to put it out there. Like I get it. If numbers are not your friend,
cool.
Great. But you still have to know your numbers and you have to be educated in your numbers. I went to this Tony Robbins event last week with Garrett called Business Mastery. And there was a guy, and I can't remember his name. He wrote a book called The Road Less Stupid. And he's a big numbers guy. Damn it. I can't. Keith, I can't remember. Anyways, and he developed this software to basically help people with their numbers. We bought it. It looks super cool. Mm-hmm. But he was basically making the statement of like, hey, like it's one thing to see a spreadsheet from your accountant and know your numbers, but the power is in like looking at your numbers and knowing how to adjust. Even if you're super successful, if you can't look at your numbers and be like, okay, like we need to take away this and this, or we need to like up our prices, or you know what I mean? You have to be able to look at your numbers and know how to problem solve so that you're constantly moving forward in business. Because if you're not, then you're ultimately like regressing.
Well, and a lot of our artists, what they do is by the time they're coming to BMS, they're kind of done with the industry, really, because they're working way too much, and what they're taking home is, next to nothing sometimes.
If they actually did their numbers and they measured it off the numbers of hours they're working, even if they think they're super successful, a lot of them like want to break down and cry.
For sure, because then what happens is they trade in low-paying clients for high-paying clients, but the hours are still the exact same. Mm-hmm. But even then, now they're working more because they almost become like addicted to it. Like it is an addiction, but all of a sudden they're like, I'm exhausted and I don't have time. Even one of our trainers we're bringing on is in this right now. And we straight up looked at her. We're like, you don't even have time to take on a class if you wanted to.
Well, and we straight up asked her, we're like, do you want to be an educator? And the fact that she hesitated, and then we found out she was like working 5-6 days a week. And we were like, okay, here's the thing. If you're overwhelmed, the only reason you would pass down more opportunity is if you are overwhelmed. Like that's just how it is. So you have to ask yourself in business and in life, like, where am I missing out on opportunities because I'm overwhelmed and I can't see the clear picture of where I'm currently at in my business?
And that's the thing, once you start getting to overwhelm, that leads to exhaustion. You're irritable at home, you're irritable at work. Like everything is affected when you don't have time to breathe, and you need space to breathe. It's vital for just your sanity.
Right.
And that's why when we were talking to her, like she was kind of breaking down at that point. She's like, we were like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, why are you working 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week?
And it's not only that. Like we know if you run like a small boutique salon, or you rent, or you run your own business, it's not even just about the physical hours behind the chair, but we know how it is to like follow through with clients. Like there's so much more to a business than actually doing the art of hair. Like you almost like can't be successful at the level you could be working that many hours unless you have like a full team staff, like social media team, like everything. But if you don't, you're really just running yourself into the ground.
And that's pretty much what she was doing. So her response was, she just said, she's like, you guys told me to hustle. She's like, and I did. She goes, I don't know how to reel it back in now. And I was like,
It's hard. It's hard to say like no to the money, and then it's hard to say no to clients because you become like really good friends with them. I find the easiest way to value your time and hours behind the chair more is to be able to look at like, okay, what clients am I making the most money on? And then like a lot of stylists will say, well, I'm strictly MBR, but they're still doing like little root touch-ups, or they're doing like one row tightens. Or you can even look at like certain clients of like, okay, Sally keeps her hair for like 9 months. Like I might have to say, sorry, Sally, like bye-bye. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And the easiest way for me, like to be able to make that leap is you just make a small price increase and enough fall off. But we've had people do that too. They're like, okay, well, I made a price increase and everybody stayed. And I'm like, okay, then you cut down your hours. And when they go to rebook, you're like, I'm sorry, I'll have to refer you to somebody else. I'm booked up. So you have to set boundaries of like the hours that you are willing to commit behind the chair.
And you have to stick with those boundaries. That's the hardest thing, because we get so guilted into it. All of a sudden we're like, well, I'm
already there.
Want to work Sunday at 8 p.m. But, oh, gosh.
I have to go in anyways and count color boxes. So, sure.
Oh, my God. That is every time I see our salon manager doing it, I'm like, I don't want your job, honestly. Like, I'm going to have to do a walk and talk at 5:15 a.m., but I don't want to count color boxes.
Oh, God.
So
I know.
I'll take my walk and talk. I'm kidding. I support her. I'm like, you need any help? Because I can count, but doesn't look like fun. But no, it is. And people, it does make me feel bad for them. Like, God, they just get so stuck. And something that we've actually done before is we say, take your top 3 clients and then take your bottom 3 clients.
Right.
And for someone listening, I know you're sitting there like, I love all my clients. Fine, then pick your least favorite of your favorite, whatever. But there's always
you got to remember you're in the
hierarchy.
business of making money. So you, like, even if you have a really great relationship, when you look at your numbers, it allows you to tell Sally who is actually you're probably giving a discount to because she's your sister's husband's brother-in-law's grandpa's uncle sister.
Second cousin twice removed.
Yeah. So you're like, oh, but I like her so much, so I give her like $150 off every time. And you're like, oh, well, you definitely have to cut her.
Yeah.
Because it just takes away from your time.
For sure. And then what you can do is looking at your top 3, looking at your bottom 3, really kind of start to write out like the characteristics of all of them. Like, what about them makes them your top 3? What about them makes them your bottom 3? And I feel once you can start to identify those things, because we've done that with people in the program, like we've done it before, you can really see that the top and bottom, the top 3 have very similar characteristics.
Right.
And the bottom have very similar characteristics. And once you can see that and start pinpointing it, it's much easier for you to cut.
Let me ask you this, because I'm very protective of my energy. So say you have a client who gets new hair every time, but they're a big fat B.
You're out. I'm not playing this game.
I feel like, too, I think people don't think of that, too. Like, you get to choose who sits in your chair. And I'm not saying you have to be, like, snooty about it, but at the same time, if they're affecting your energy, you have to understand what that's going to carry over into your family, what that's going to carry over into your other client relationships. And so clients like that, where you get stressed out and you see their names on their books and you're like, oh God, and you have to like prep the team and get ready for Susie, she's coming in. Like, regardless if they get new hair every time, it's not worth it. It could be actually costing you clients based on the stress level that it's giving you.
And for me, I know artists are looked down so frequently in the industry, and even recently at DKW, because we have a very strict 20-minute rule on being late. And one of my clients was already 20 minutes late. Our concierge texted her and said, hey, Sally, we're going to have to reschedule you. Her response was, no way, be there in 10.
Great. You can go somewhere else.
I was clearly not thrilled about that.
Yeah, like it's like we're not trying to be rude, but
how is that fair to my next client, Susan, who's for sure on time?
Right.
So of course I sat there and poor Lo looked at me, looked at the phone, looked at me. He like didn't even know how to tell me, because I feel like
we're very much for the client experience, like
100%.
But at the same time, like that's not cool.
Well, she ended up being 40 minutes late. After 20, she said 10. It was another 20.
Yeah.
And she walked in and her response was raining last time. Now it's not. It was fine. I hear you. But I sat down and I was like, okay, so I can't do your whole appointment. So here are the options you now have. Future notice, not doing this again.
But I think that was good that you explained it to her, because I remember what I used to do if that happened is I'd be like, shit, and I'd be afraid to lose the client. And so I let them control the frame of my whole day because they were 40 minutes late. And then that also set up bad patterns and routines for them later on, which would then ruin multiple days for me. And so I would be like, it's okay, I'll work you in, not realizing that kind of fucked my whole day. So like you have to set boundaries with your energy that you set inside your salon so that you deliver an amazing experience for everybody. And you know what? Like, I get it. Time goes both ways, and I do my best as a stylist. Like, if I'm running late, I'm like, Lo, please text him, tell them I'm running like 15 minutes behind, but that rarely happens, because usually I'm like, all right, let's get him in. Even if I'm just like have somebody removing their extensions, my goal is to never start anybody more than like 5-10 minutes late. I'm like, if I set a rule for myself, I have to live by that rule,
And you know me. When am I ever late to anything?
Right.
Like, really, I've lived here probably a year and a half now. Have I ever been late to anything? I'm a lunatic.
You're very punctual. I am.
Thank you.
Semi-punctual.
I greatly appreciate. Hey, you know what? Anything under 5 and I'm proud of you. Let's be honest.
You know what? I used to be like so on time. I will say this, like when I didn't have as much help and I had to drive further, I had to drive like 30 minutes to the salon when we first moved to California. And at the time, I didn't have a babysitter, and Garrett was like working his ass off. I had no help. I didn't know anybody. So I was like, okay, pack lunches, leave by 8 o'clock, like drop the kids off. Like, I was never late. If anything, I was always 30 minutes behind. I mean, ahead.
Like, wow.
I would set up my tray. Like, I was like pumped to go. But now I feel like I have the salon and team and everything. And so I know, like, I can roll in right at 9. They've already got her prepped. Beads are moved. I'm like, hey, let's do this. You know what I mean? But I swear I was actually a very punctual person. But now I feel like I'm like, okay, we're ready and we're ready to go.
I'm insanely punctual with everything. I think I get to the salon an hour before my first client. I want time to set it up and be calm. Don't rush me.
I think I get antsy if I get there too early.
No, I'm chilling, man.
I literally am like,
You're like, why are they late? It's 45 minutes early.
I know, yeah.
All I know is you have to respect yourself. You have to respect yourself with time. You have to respect yourself with money. You have to respect yourself by actually practicing enough to call yourself an expert at something and not just that you took one class that one time in that one city 5 years ago.
And the same goes with education. Don't call yourself an educator and an expert inside of education if you don't have reps educating. And clients out there, do your research. Whether you're going to a class or whether you're going to a salon, make sure that you go to somebody that you feel comfortable with and that has reps inside of the industry that you're looking to go get a service from.
So with that being said, thank you for once again joining us for another episode of the
Do your fucking numbers.
for the Big Money Stylist podcast, and we will see you guys next week.